Pokémon has grown. Back in 2018, the competitive Pokémon TCG scene was very different from what we see today. A big tournament back then might have been 100, maybe 200 players packed into a hall. That was the scale of organized play. Passionate, small, and cute, but nowhere near the spectacle it would eventually become. Because fast forward to now, and things have changed beyond recognition. Modern Pokémon events draw thousands, not hundreds, thousands of players. The biggest events of 2024-2025 season shattered every record we'd ever seen before, with over 5,000 players battling under one roof. To put that into perspective, that's nearly 30 times bigger than those 2018 events. The game has grown into something massive, something global, something few could have imagined back then. And with that growth, you'd expect a few things. One being variety. Thousands of players, hundreds of ideas, countless decks. Surely the metagame would be more open than ever, with creativity rewarded and diversity flourishing. But that's not really what's happening, because despite all this growth, all this change, one deck has stood tall above the rest. A single deck that has defined and dominated this era of the Pokémon trading card game. Gardevoir EX.
But Gardevoir up to 15.3%. Not surprising after seeing its dominance in recent tournaments.
You can't beat them, join them, right? That seems to be the approach here we're seeing. Like, people are seeing Gardevoir just keeps winning and winning and winning. There must be something to it, right? Yeah?
Gardevoir hasn't just been strong, it's been omnipresent. Week after week, event after event, Gardevoir players fill the top tables. It isn't just winning, it's setting pace for the entire format. Entire tournaments were shaped around one question. Can you beat Gardevoir? And more often than not, the answer was no. And here's the strange thing, Gardevoir wasn't even supposed to be here. When rotation hit, many players believed it spelled the end of the deck. Without key cards, without its old support pieces, Gardevoir was expected to collapse under the weight of the new format.
Because it was the beginning of last season, right, where he kind of at least, knocked my socks off, bringing Gardevoir to a tournament where I thought it wasn't really a good pick, and he's just led this revolution with the deck and with the archetype, innovating it constantly and seeing success, and now a lot of players tuning in and listening to Henry Chow FM radio and getting the details.
The stage seemed set for a new era of decks to rise up. That was supposed to be the moment when creativity reigned again, when players would innovate, when rogue strategies would finally break through. Decks like Terapagos were designed to thrive in this new world, experimental, flexible, a toolbox of answers for a wide metagame. These were the archetypes meant to symbolize a post-Gardevoir format. But instead, Gardevoir adapted, it refused to die, and once again, it became the deck to beat. For months, it felt like the cycle would never end. Bigger events, bigger stakes, same results. Gardevoir at the top. And at the biggest Pokemon tournament in history, Yokohama Champions League, with 6,000 players and the entire world watching, Gardevoir found itself in yet another finals. Another page in writing history herself, but this time, it was different. Across the table was a rogue idea, a forgotten strategy, a deck nobody really believed in. Terapagos. To understand what made this deck so unusual, you first need to understand what it actually is. Because Terapagos isn't just one clear-cut strategy. Like Gardevoir or Charizard, unlike those decks, it's a toolbox, a collection of different attackers, each with their own role, each meant to answer a different part of the metagame. At its core, Terapagos revolves around the Noctowl engine. Noctowl is a very powerful card. If you have a Terra Pokemon in play, when you evolve into Noctowl, you can search a deck for up to 2 trainers, and trainers are the lifeblood of this game. Using these trainers, you can power up various attackers depending on the matchups. You have Pikachu EX, which has a really powerful attack that lets it do 300 damage. You have Terapagos, which is a consistent attacker that for the low cost of 2 energy, it does consistent damage. Then we have Wellspring Ogerpon. Wellspring Ogerpon is probably the strongest attacker in the deck. That's because of one reason. The Bench Snipe. Snipe is very powerful in the Pokemon trading card game, and that's why people thought this deck would be incredibly strong, because as a rotation hit, Manaphy rotated out of the format, which meant the format no longer had a bench barrier to protect benched Pokemon, and Water Ogerpon was thought to reign supreme. However, the deck didn't live up to hype. It did quite well in Japan, but completely flopped in the Western world. And as more sets rolled out, we saw Shaman printed, a new bench barrier. And that was that. People thought, well, Terapagos is dead. Its main attacker, and the reason it was so good, is now not viable. But people didn't really respect Water Ogerpon, so they didn't really include Shaman, and that was something that led up to this tournament. You see, decks like Gardevoir and decks like Dragapult, they rely on their baby Pokemon to evolve into, well, their Gardevoirs and Dragapults. Gardevoir has to evolve from Routes, and Dragapult has to evolve from Dreepy. And Wellspring Ogerpon is really good at preying on these Pokemon, as they have a low amount of HP, and Water Ogerpon can target them down very easily. The only issue is, Terapagos has absolutely zero way to deal with Gardevoir once it evolves into Gardevoir. And that's the problem. This matchup is horrible. So you have one strategy: prevent them from finding Gardevoir. And that's easier said than done. Gardevoir is a very consistent deck, and a deck that finds itself in a position with Gardevoir being active very quickly. So Terapagos' concept is simple. Instead of relying on one game plan, Terapagos adapts. In theory, it can handle anything, but in practice, players don't really believe in it. The deck looked inconsistent. It looked fragile, a pile of different cards without a clear identity. Too many moving parts, too many what-ifs. In a format where refined, proven lists were dominating, Terapagos felt like a rogue sketch. Creative, but not competitive. And yet, behind all that chaos, there was genius. Because what Terapagos offered wasn't randomness, it was flexibility. It was a strategy that could pivot mid-match, catch opponents off guard, and exploit weaknesses no one else was prepared for. Still, almost no one brought it to major events. It was rogue, forgotten, and overshadowed by the giants of the format. Until now. At the largest tournament in history, Terapagos suddenly wasn't just a theory. It wasn't just a rogue idea buried on a testing spreadsheet. It was real, sleeved up and sitting across from Gardevoir EX in the grand finals.
その誕生の瞬間を見届けましょう。決勝戦です。はい。では始めます。バトルスタートお願いします。
After 15 rounds of grueling play, it all led up to this. On the left, we had Takataku Shota playing Gardevoir EX, and on the right, we had Nobuto Hongo piloting Terapagos. As the prize cards were laid out, we saw something interesting. Shota had prized 2 of his Monkeydories. This is important because Monkeydory is the lifeblood of Gardevoir and the reason it's so strong in today's format.
始まりのチャンピオン。今年はこの男から始まる。そのたった一人を、その誕生の瞬間を見届けましょう。決勝戦です。はい。では始めます。バトルスタートお願いします。握手から始まりました。両選手に大きな拍手を。
Hongo was able to find Nest Ball, and this is incredibly strong, as from this position you're able to find Fan Rotom. Fan Rotom is incredibly strong on your first turn, and only on your first turn, because it has an ability called Fan Call that lets you search for up to 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less and put them into your hand. This is able to help you set up Hootoots and Noctowls, which is the lifeblood of your deck and the main engine of Terapagos.
安定感というのを自身で証明してくれてますね。
そうですね。このデッキは安定感とやはり速さが売りのデッキになっていますので、高徳選手が準備を終える前に一気に蹴りを。
Hongo opted for Ditto, Hoothoot, and Noctowl. This is a very strong selection of cards because Hoothoot and the Noctowl are your engine, and Ditto, when it's in the active position, can transform into any basic Pokemon in your deck. However, there's a problem. How are you going to get that Hoothoot out of the active position without using your energy for turn? Because energy for turn is super important when attached to something like a Water Ogerpon. Well, that's simple. With Latias EX, which Hongo goes for off of this Ultra Ball, you're able to pivot any basic Pokemon for free. And being able to bring Ditto into the active position, we're able to transform the Ditto into our Water Ogerpon, meaning now we can manually attach to the Water Ogerpon, and from here, we've had a really strong first turn.
EX の特性スカイラインで種ポケモン逃げるためのエネルギーがなくなっていて、メタモンの変身スタートで、これも最初の場にしか使えないんですが、山札から好きなポケモンと変わることができるというところで出てきましたね。オーガポン糸の目 EX、激流ポンプが、次の番に使えると高徳選手のポケモン一気に2匹倒すこともできるんじゃないかというところですね。配信卓でもかなり見られている。
さあ先行1回目の番本郷信人選手の時間がまだ続きます。一つ基本草エネルギーを。
Unfortunately for Shota, his hand is not very good. We see a Nest Ball, but Nest Balling for a Routes won't do anything because you'll just lose on the following turn. So we saw him go for the next best thing, Fezandipity. Fezandipity is a 2-price Pokemon with 210 HP, meaning Water Ogerpon can't kill it, which is very strong. So when Screamtail goes down, we still have Fezandipity in play. But that's not the main reason we go for Fezandipity. Fezandipity has an ability called Flip the Script, and if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, then you get to draw 3 cards. And that's exactly what Shota needs in this position. He needs to draw new cards.
進化の準備をしていきたい。 そしてサーナイト EX になると、トラッシュの超エネルギーを自分のポケモンにつけるというような特性がありますので、トラッシュに超エネルギーを送っておくということもしておきたいですね。
はい、高徳選手のネストボールから現れたのはキチキギス EX です。
キチキギス EX は、前の番に自分のポケモンが気絶させられていると、逆手に取るという特性で山札3枚引けますので、次の番以降ですね、本郷選手が激流ポンプで何か倒してきた返しに、しっかり逆手に取るを使って引いていきたい。
We see an attachment for turn to the Pheasantipity, and from here, the turn is ended, going back to Hongo's turn. And he takes a bit of a think, because, well, he knows that he can knock out the Screamtail, but if he does, then Shot has access to, well, Pheasantipity. And does he really want to do that? The nice thing about Water Ogerpon is that you have an option of the attack. The second attack does 100 damage and 120 damage to the bench, but only if you shuffle the energy back into your deck. So he can take a knockout onto the Screamtail without shuffling the energy back into the deck. And this is quite strong, because it means now if Shota is able to find more routes, all Hongo would need would be a boss's orders. And from here, he'd be able to kill both of the routes and stay in a very commanding position.
希望の一筋、デッキから見つけてくることはできるでしょうか。
赤松などなどが考えられますかね。あとは例えばきらめく結晶だったり、
手札確認。
あとはスタジアムなどもね選べます。トレーナーズというのはサポート、グッズ、ポケモンの道具、スタジアムどれでもね、いけますので、この夜の族が非常に安定感をもたらしてくれる、そういったデッキになっています。
ここまでの本郷選手の配信卓での試合ではきらめく結晶と赤松をしっかりとこの手札に呼び寄せて、この先行2回目の番で激流ポンプを放っていくという姿も幾度となく見られました。
And this is exactly what we saw. Hongo took the knockout without shuffling the energy back into the deck, as he knew that Shota doesn't have much in his hand, meaning even if he is able to find a few routes, he'll be able to take them both out on the following turn.
混ぜることによって、本郷選手があまり動きが鈍いような番が何回か続くと、ラルトスがキルリアサーナイト EX を進化していって、アタッカーを作り直して、逆転ペースを握り返すような、
これ口とさ、幾度となくこのゼロの大空洞。
And that's where we see the boss's orders for the routes, and because of this, we're able to see the knockout onto both of the routes. However, there's a problem here. If we look at Hongo's board state, he has no more Hootuts, and this is a big problem, meaning we have no access to knockdowns, and on the following turn, this could definitely be a very big problem. Because, well, if you don't have knockdowns, you have no search engine. The only thing we have here is the Mew EX, and Mew EX can only draw us cards if we have less than 3 cards in our hand. Right now, us having 3 cards in our hand means Mew can't draw us any cards. With an attachment for turn, we have 2 cards, meaning Mew can draw us 1. However, 1 card isn't really going to help us in this situation, so the next turn might be a little bit difficult.
確かに出したいですね。今後のことを考えると、方法が1匹でも出ているとかなり嬉しいんですが、どうでしょう、出せますかね。
ミュウに手張りで、
さあミュウに手札から基本エネルギーがつきまして、技宣言、激流ポンプです。バトル場のラルトスとベンチのラルトスが倒れました。
一旦サーナイト EX はこの番には出てこないぞと、いうことで、ペースは本郷選手にあるように見えます。しかし新しい方法は出ていない。
これでサイド2枚取りまして、サイド的には先行している本郷信人選手、残り3枚です。番が移ります。高校3回目、高徳翔太選手の番です。
We see a flip the script from Shota, and that's all he's really been able to do this entire game. Just flip the script whenever any of his Pokemon go down. However, his hand is okay. He has the routes, he has the support of a turn, but realistically, it just isn't looking good, because he has no real attack this turn other than Mind Bend. And Mind Bend isn't that good when your opponent doesn't even have an attack lined up with the active Pokemon on the following turn. And the worst part of this all is that he only has 1 route, so if Hongo is able to find another Gust to KO this route, well, then that just means that you're not going to be getting Gardevoir out for even longer. And right now, Gardevoir is needed, because looking at this board state, this game just is not going in his favor whatsoever. However, there is still hope. Due to the fact that Hongo still has no real draw next turn, we can kind of just hope that he doesn't have anything for the following turn and just has to pass back, and from there, maybe we can get back into the game. And this is something that Gardevoir is really good at, making unexpected comebacks. So anyone who wrote off Gardevoir in this position was crazy.
自分の場を作っていきたい ところですね。
高徳選手入念に3段を整えている、盤面をしっかりと見つめています。さあ勇気の守りをマシマシラにつけました。これでマシマシラの体力も170でしょうか。
はい、
160ですね、失礼。
博士の研究でやっぱトラッシュしてしまうのであれば、
はい、
つけておこうというところですね。
そうですね。
はい。ハンド何枚ですか？ハンドが4枚です。
さあじっくりと確認します。この決勝戦のみ制限時間が他の試合より10分長いです。
はい、
35分間で行われます。
いや、この勇気の守りをトラッシュするのであればとつけてるとは思うんですけれども、
はい、
これもかなり強くてですね、激流ポンプで倒れないマシマシラがいるっていうのは一つ大きいですよね。
さあ高徳翔太選手、高校3回目の番が終わりました。
赤松あんのすごいぞ。
本郷信人選手。
And that's when we see the pass from Shota back to Hongo, and Hongo is able to find a Crispin, which lets him search for up to 2 energy of different types and attach 1 to his Pokemon and 1 to his hand. And from here, we see a play that is incredibly powerful from the side of Hongo. He attaches to his Mew EX, and Mew EX has an attack that lets you copy your opponent's active Pokemon attack. And in this way, he's able to copy Fezzendipity's Cruel Arrow attack and take out the benched Ralts. This was a complete oversight from Shota and could very much so come back to bite him. And in this position, it really does, as he goes for a Nest Ball, but there's no more routes in the deck. All of his routes are in the discard pile right now. And this small oversight is what caused Shota to just lose track of this game. Unfortunately for him, this is where things all went downhill. Or did they? A counter catcher and an Iono to 2. This meant that Hongo would only see 2 cards, while Shota sees a fresh new 6. He just needs to find any form of recovery with this and his Fezzendippity.
夜の単価か。
夜の単価です。
エネルギーを
A Night Stretcher being played, able to grab a Routes from the discard pile and put it onto the bench. This means at least we have 1 Routes, and now we're back in the game. Shota has trapped Hongo's Noctowl in the active position, meaning it can't retreat because it's not a basic Pokemon. And that's because Latias can only move basic Pokemon. So, Noctowl stuck in the active with only 2 cards in hand. Unfortunately, Fezzendippity isn't able to find another form of retrieval, so that just means we have to attach to our Fez and pass. And this might be yet another oversight, as we see a Night Stretcher for an energy to attach and retreat into the Mew, and Mew is able to take the knockout onto the routes yet again. And this is just another mistake from Shota. We could have seen a retreat into a Munkidori, but instead no, we see a pass.
その恩恵を存分に受けたデッキで激闘を制しようと王手をかけています。さあ高徳翔太選手、
もう一度カウンターキャッチャーで夜の族を呼び出して、でスタジアムはボールタウンに変えましたね。
はい、
これでミステリーガーデンではなくなったので、本郷選手が例えばエネルギーをトラッシュして引くというような動きも一旦は止められそうということですね。このままサポートもまだ残っている。何女ももし使うと本郷選手の手札を1枚にできる。
そうですね。
このミュー EX のリスタートと本郷選手が山から引く1枚で解決できなければ、高徳選手に再び番が回ってくる可能性も大いにあると。
そうですね。
いうところです。
エスパータイプラティアス EX、ミュー EX がベンチにいることからもスタジアムをボールタウンに張り替えました。ここでなんじゃもね。
However, he hits another Iono, and now this time it's an Iono to 1. And now we see the attach to the Fezzendippity and 100 damage being dealt to Mew EX. We draw for turn, and it's not much. We see Mew EX to draw us 1 more card, and from in this position, we have Ultra Ball, Judge, and Water Ogerpon. We play the Judge. We still need to find a way to get this knocked out of the position and find a way to take 1 more prize card. And this turn, it's not looking very likely for that to happen.
ただスタジアムを変えられるだけでも大きいんですよ。方法を1匹置ける。はい。それでもいい。
その4枚は鉄の下だ。オーガポン緑の面とボスの指令です。
なるほど。ただポケモンなんですよね。どれも強いポケモンなんですが。そうです。
In fact, the hand we draw isn't really good at all. We see 3 Pokemon on the boss's orders. Unfortunately for us, we see no way to get this Noctowl out of the active position. And we have no way to take a prize card even on our following turn. All of a sudden, this game looks like it might be slipping from Hongo's grasp.
チャンスを高徳翔太にもたらしました。高徳選手、高校6回目の番です。
おお、シークレットボックスが見えますよ。
エーススペックシークレットボックス、ここから希望をつなぎます。なんじゃもです。もう一度1枚です。うわ
Another Iono is played from the side of Shota, and this one is very strong because he knows he's going to take out his opponent's Mew EX, which is a main draw support. So now this time, Hongo will actually just be left with a single card in play. Thanks to Shota putting down the Artisan, we see Hongo being able to use his own Artisan. Unfortunately, even if we do bench a Hoothoot, the Pheasantipity can just knock it out, and all of a sudden, our main power, Bench Snipe, has come back to haunt us. However, Shota hasn't shown us the last two cards in his hand. We find that it's a Stadium Bump for the Artisan and a Lily's Determination. This is probably the best two cards we could have seen in this position. Lily's Determination lets us shuffle our hand and draw 6 cards, and the Stadium means we can bench more Pokemon if we have a Terra in play. And since we do indeed have a Terra in play, we can now bench up to 8 Pokemon.
ハイパーブロアという特性を持っていまして、自身をプラスすることで相手にポケモンを入れ替えさせるということができますので、 HP が高いポケモンで倒しづらいとなった時は別の罪を使ってどかさせるというのも。
And all we can do is pass it over to Shota. And we see Shota have his final copy of Iono in his hand. That means that Hongo will now be down to just 1 card yet again, and Pheasantipity can go back to spawn killing these Hoothoots. And all of a sudden, it looks like this game could all be over. And this is where it happens.
なんだそのポケモン。
逆手に
うわー、キチギギス EX だ。この3枚逆手に取るだ。
山札かかっている。
どうだ。
赤松です。
赤松だ。赤松で、
そしてハイパーボール。そして赤松、これエネルギーが
来れば山札にエネルギーがどのくらいあるかですね。
そうですね、山札のエネルギー次第。
はい、
重要です。
アドレナブレインでダメ感を返して、もしマシュマシュラをどかすことができるのであれば、クルエルアローでラティアス EX に全部まとめることで倒せはするんですが、ただこうサイコトリップも強いんですよ。
技宣言最後。
ひらめく決勝で
ひらめく決勝、
大空洞を張り替えます。
これでスタジアムが変わった。
前に決勝を張ってイサハ出して、イサハ前に出して、で効果は出すだけで、スカイラインで
スカイラインで逃げます。
で赤松打って、
赤松エネルギーの準備が整った。
激流ポンプでありがとうございました。
メガ進化のこの進化を超える
めっちゃプレイしちゃった。